What is up? Welcome into yet another edition of the Ben Garcia Show. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day, however you're watching, however you're following, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, for free on the iHeartRadio app, or you are putting a face to the voice and you are watching on YouTube. Feel free to like, share, subscribe. On the road to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you want to be a part of that army, go ahead and smash the subscribe button, or if you don't want to, I'm not a beggar. That's fine. A lot of things to go over on the Ben Garcia Show today. We're going to talk all things NFL, maybe hand out some grades for some teams that I think have done well in free agency with the draft looming around the corner. Plus, baby, Arizona birds, don't worry, I will feed you. We will talk some of the Cardinals, Marvin Harrison Jr., trade speculation. And if we have some time, maybe we'll dive deep into the Phoenix Suns' woes and what they can do to, at some point, be an actual NBA contender. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. So first things first, let's talk about it. Justin Fields has been traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it's a great fit for him. I think it's great for the organization of the Chicago Bears. I think it's all great all around for all parties involved. Except for some Bears fans who still think Justin Fields was the truth, was the answer to all their prayers, and he just simply wasn't. Some things, a lot of things about life are about fit and are about timing. And Justin Fields didn't fit the Chicago Bears, and he really didn't fit the timeline of the Chicago Bears. This is a guy that needed to get paid soon, and he hadn't proved anything in the NFL. And the Chicago Bears are such a dysfunctional organization over the past 20 plus years that he was not talented enough to lift him up, lift that organization up from the dysfunction that they are. He just wasn't talented enough to do that. I do believe Caleb Williams is talented enough to overcome the dysfunction of the Chicago Bears. Remember the Cleveland Browns when they drafted Baker Mayfield number 1 overall? In hindsight, looked to be the best decision for them, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that one. That could have been the Josh Allen draft, and if that's the case, then I'm severely wrong on that. But either way, the Browns selecting Baker Mayfield wasn't a terrible decision in hindsight. Baker Mayfield, at the bare minimum, can play. At the bare minimum, we can all just agree that Baker Mayfield is a good quarterback. But he was not talented enough to overcome the dysfunction of the Cleveland Browns, similar to Andrew Luck was talented enough to overcome the dysfunction of the Indianapolis Colts roster at the time, or other players in the history of the NFL who have been talented enough to overcome dysfunction, but not talented enough as well to other players who were not talented enough to overcome the dysfunction of whatever team they got drafted to. And Justin Fields fit that mold. He wasn't talented enough to overcome the dysfunction of the Chicago Bears. So everyone in Chicago Bearland should be giving Ryan Poles a big ol' hug, even though they still haven't embraced the fact that Justin Fields is not the guy in Chicago. And that brings me to Caleb Williams. I have my reservations about Caleb Williams emotionally. I think he's a little bit immature. I think from what we've seen, his snarkiness to the media, him going out to the stands and crying to his mother after a third loss in a game, there's a difference to me between passion and then making it all about you. That was weird to me. So my issues with Caleb Williams have always been the maturity, the asking for, the rumors about asking for ownership of a team. That was true. His father tried to do that. Regardless of Chicago Bears fans want to say he didn't. He absolutely did. Saying he wanted to go cry and eat ice cream and sit with his dog and watch TV shows was just weird to me. So some of the things Caleb Williams has done has just been weird to me. It's just been a little immature, whether it's crying in the stands to your mother, whether it's the snarkiness in the media, whether it's the reports that he potentially was going to ask for ownership of teams, whatever it was for Caleb Williams, there are some questions for his maturity. Now, granted, has he shown better signs of that recently? Yes. But take away all those things. Caleb Williams is something Justin Fields was simply not. He is incredibly talented. He's one of the best prospects that we've seen in the past half decade or so in terms of quarterbacks, maybe even longer. So if there's someone that can overcome the dysfunction of the Chicago Bears organization, it's Caleb Williams. It was never Justin Fields. And any Bears fan that thinks that the opposite should have been flipped and Justin Fields should have carried this franchise, they're just wrong. And it's just plain as that. There's no statistic. There's nothing out there to show that Justin Fields has proven anything besides he's a mediocre quarterback in the NFL. And it's okay to admit it. It's okay to admit that you were wrong. It's okay that sometimes I admit occasionally I'm wrong. Even the greats like myself admit they're wrong at times. But Ryan Poles made the right decision. Getting off of Justin Fields, you couldn't bring him back. That would have divided the locker room even more so than it already was. And bringing in Caleb Williams with a clean slate, starting over the rookie clock, and Bears fans are going to be exceedingly excited in 2 years when Caleb Williams is a Pro Bowl quarterback and they get to use all the money they're saving at quarterback to load him up with all the pieces on offense he wants. Similar to guys like Keenan Allen, like DeAndre Swift, and even more so on the defensive side. They can load up that as well. The Chicago Bears made the right decision, made the mature decision, and Caleb Williams is talented enough to overcome the dysfunctional organization. Justin Fields was just simply never talented enough to do so. So there's two teams immediately that I think of that had a really good free agency and another team that I think had a win the headlines free agency. I put out a take last week that the Philadelphia Eagles had an interesting offseason. I didn't necessarily agree, not even necessarily, I didn't agree at all with the Saquon Barkley deal. I thought it was too rich for my taste. I thought it was crazy to give money to a running back position in which everyone is not giving money to in this day and age, with holes at certain positions like Josh Sweat, like Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick could still absolutely be gone. Josh Sweat looks like he's going to stay after a disappointing campaign in 2023. But here's my problem with the Philadelphia Eagles. The linebackers are still really bad, and the secondary is still really bad. Darius Slay is 32, 33 years old. He's not getting any younger. And what happens with cornerbacks as they get older? They tend to deteriorate pretty rapidly, similar to running backs, and aren't necessarily to keep up with the speed of the NFL as the elite cornerbacks can do. Darius Slay's been a fine pro, but sometimes they just tend to fall off a cliff. Maybe he won't, but that's a question mark there. James Bradbury can't cover anything. And the linebackers of the Philadelphia Eagles are still suspect to say the least. For Philadelphia Eagles fans who have simply looked at the Philadelphia Eagles names that they brought in and said, we did it, we won the offseason, I encourage you to really look into the players that you got. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, although was a very solid safety for the Philadelphia Eagles, led in 2023 one of the worst secondaries in the Detroit Lions. He wasn't great. He was very mid, as the kids like to say. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was not an amazing free agency signing that's going to fix everything in the secondary. If anything, it's a middle-of-the-road free agency signing that wins headlines because for some reason, that's what Philadelphia Eagles fans are into. Devin White, the linebacker that was got by the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia Eagles fans, ask yourself this. Ask yourself this. If Devin White was so good, if Devin White was going to solve the linebacker problems, why did the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who absolutely had the money to match that offer, decide, who have seen him for years now, yeah, we're good on Devin White? Why'd they do that, Eagles fans? Why'd they do that? Maybe because Devin White isn't so good after all. Maybe because Devin White isn't exactly the linebacker that you think he is. He's a very poor tackler, and he gets ran over by offensive linemen a lot. He's not great in the run game. It's similar to Isaiah Simmons. We see a player that can jump high, that can run really fast, and is a human highlight reel for either a year or as Isaiah Simmons was in college, and we just think they're going to hit in the NFL. Devin White has been an overwhelming bust in the NFL. He's not a good linebacker. That was a win the headlines type of signing for the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't blame them for bringing him in. Maybe they can figure him out. Maybe Vic Fangio can. But I still have a ton of questions about the Philadelphia Eagles, mainly on the offensive side of the ball with all those weapons that they had simply last year with a ton of weapons. But their head coach, Nick Sirianni, could not figure it out. So spare me the argument that you got Huff on the defensive line and you're keeping Josh Sweat and you got guys as well as Saquon Barkley and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Free agency is fool's gold. I still have a ton of questions about the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm not going to act like I'm sending them to the Super Bowl or winning their division because they signed a running back in Saquon Barkley who has not had a 1,000-yard season in the past 4 seasons. So spare me that argument. And another team that I think on the flip side had an amazing free agency. I am much higher on this team right now than I was a year ago. There's still the NFL draft to happen. Maybe they add another player to this position. But the New York Jets going and getting another weapon for Aaron Rodgers and bringing in the tackle from the Dallas Cowboys and Tyron Smith, I think were great deals. They're not tied up to either of these guys. These are both one-year deals. And I said last year, I didn't buy this New York Jets offense. Granted, one of my reasonings was Breece Hall is coming off an injury. Who knows if he's going to be the same guy? He absolutely was. But this New York Jets offense was a lot of flash, a lot of glamour, but not necessarily deep in positions where they needed to be. It was a lot of Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers to start the season and nothing else. But then Breece Hall came on, but they were still missing another weapon. Mike Williams, although coming off of a significant injury, was never one of those guys who beat you over the top with his speed. He was always an elite route runner and a jump ball wide receiver. This is a guy who leaned on his route running. This is a guy who leaned on his jump ball red zone threat ability. So for the New York Jets, whose defense was stout last year, was very good. Robert Saleh had them humming to end the season. We don't know about Aaron Rodgers. That's the X factor for the New York Jets. The X factor for the New York Jets is plain and simply Aaron Rodgers, because I love what they've done in free agency this year. They added a tackle in Tyron Smith, said goodbye to Mekhi Becton. Tyron Smith in, Mekhi Becton out there in the left tackle position. And then they went and got a big body receiver in Mike Williams, who, yes, coming off an injury, this is not a guy who would ever beat you over the top with his speed. This is a big body wide receiver, a red zone threat, and it adds yet another layer to this offense for Aaron Rodgers to dissect. You got Mike Williams now, you got Breece Hall, and you got Garrett Wilson. Those are 3 legitimate weapons, and they still have the draft to attack. Now, the X factor for the New York Jets is Aaron Rodgers. The last time we saw Aaron Rodgers play, he wasn't very good. He was just a middle-of-the-road quarterback, statistically speaking, and he did not elevate the Packers enough around them to the playoffs. Now, maybe that's changed. Maybe there were some issues internally for the Green Bay Packers, but I saw the Green Bay Packers get better this year without Aaron Rodgers. They just simply did. They made the playoffs, and they made clutch situations happen, where in the last year of Aaron Rodgers, he just didn't make that happen. So now you have to find out if Aaron Rodgers can still play. Coming off of an Achilles tear, I have my doubts for Aaron Rodgers. But here's what I will say. If Aaron Rodgers can still play at a top 10 quarterback level, I love this New York Jets offense. I love this New York Jets team. Breece Hall coming back, commanding that running back room, adding a real second dimension to that pass offense that will happen with Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams on both ends. And then being able to add another weapon in the draft. And these are not contracts that they're tied up with. Mike Williams, 1-year deal. Tyron Smith, 1-year deal. These are not things that are going to hinder the New York Jets forever. But I love what the New York Jets did in free agency, specifically picking out pieces of need and filling those holes. And I don't really love what the Philadelphia Eagles did. We'll continue to talk more free agency next week. But until then, those are my 2 grades. I love what the New York Jets did, not so much what the Philadelphia Eagles are doing. One is trying to win headlines, and the other one is filling real positions of need. Let's continue to talk the team I do cover here in Phoenix, Arizona, in the Arizona Cardinals. Let's kind of keep this short and sweet, but there's real momentum for an Arizona Cardinals trade down with the Minnesota Vikings. It's what's eaten up all the headlines since Friday. It's what I talked about on Fox Sports 910 a.m. in Phoenix when I filled in for 4 hours on the radio. You can tune into me and hear me every day on The Drive with Jody Ayler here on Fox Sports 910 a.m. or on the free iHeartRadio app. Just search The Drive with Jody Ayler. I'm the producer on that show. You'll hear me frequently, but on Friday, I had the prestigious honor of filling in. It was awesome, and it just recently broke the news. The Minnesota Vikings trading up in the NFL draft, and now it's got everyone speculating. As this has marinated, as this news has continued to trickle down from the Minnesota Vikings' possible trade-up scenario with the Arizona Cardinals, I am now firmly of the belief that the Arizona Cardinals are just going to trade down in this draft. As much as I love Marvin Harrison Jr., as much as I love the dynamic, fun nature that he'd bring to this team, the smart thing to do, the more boring thing to do, the thing that is built on championships is not taking the star player, is going out of your way, taking multiple first-round picks, and getting the positions you need more filled than wide receiver in what is an incredibly deep wide receiver draft. Cardinals fans, let me just level with you that want Marvin Harrison Jr. This is one of the deepest wide receiver drafts that we've seen in a half decade, possibly longer, possibly, dare I even say, ever. There's guys out the wazoo in this draft, whether it's a Lad McConkey or whether it's a Keon Coleman, a Rome Odunze, a Malik Neighbors, whether it's Brian Thompson Jr. from Notre Dame, whether it's Marvin Harrison Jr. There are multiple wide receivers in this draft. I think there's multiple wide receiver ones in this draft. And we see in the NFL, wide receivers are always available. Heck, the Cardinals traded for one a couple of years ago in DeAndre Hopkins, in which no one thought he was going to get moved. As much as I love Marvin Harrison Jr., the smart thing for the Cardinals to do is trade down. Now there's a price tag to this. If the Cardinals get offered 3 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and a 4th or a 3rd-round pick, I would take it. I think it's just the smart, mature thing to do, and if you're Monty Ossenfort, you're taking that deal all day long. I understand Marvin Harrison Jr. is awesome, and let's just assume Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be the greatest wide receiver we've seen in the NFL draft come out in the last half decade, better than Jamar Chase, better than Justin Jefferson. Let's just assume he's an awesome wide receiver. But also, let's assume if the Cardinals nail every pick in the first round. Let's assume the Cardinals go get Jared Verse. Who knows? Maybe Dallas Turner falls in the draft. Weird things happen in the NFL draft every single year. Whether it's Jared Verse, whether it's Dallas Turner in this draft. Those two guys could fall to the Arizona Cardinals. But it's not just those positions. What if the Cardinals can fill other positions of need? The Cardinals go get an offensive lineman, maybe Morgan from Arizona. Or the Arizona Cardinals fill cornerback need. Cooper DeJean from Iowa. Or Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama. Or the Arizona Cardinals decide to go get a wide receiver with that 3rd pick. You can potentially fill 3 major holes of needs in this draft. You could fill the defensive tackle position, the cornerback position, because there's more issues with this Arizona Cardinals team than just wide receiver. In fact, I'd argue that that's their 4th biggest position of need. Did you see running backs barrel over these defensive line all year long? Did you see these cornerbacks struggle to stay healthy and as well as struggle to stay with any wide receiver on the field? Did you struggle with the fact that they have no offensive line depth now with DJ Humphries being gone? This Cardinals team has multiple holes everywhere. Whether it's The linebackers, we don't know if Mac Wilson's going to work out. We know Kaiser White was good, but the Cardinals have 0 pass rushers on this team. They have 0 cover corners. I know Sean Murphy Bunting is here, but at times he can be a penalty machine. And then the safety position. Buda Baker's probably out the door sometime soon. We don't know how long he's going to be here. My argument has been quality and quantity over just one guy, because you can have both here. If the Arizona Cardinals get an offer to trade down from the number 4 position, there's only one way I'm taking it. They're going to pay the quarterback tax, and they have to convince the Cardinals to not take Marvin Harrison Jr. So what does that mean? That's 3 firsts, 2 firsts this year, 1 first next year, a second-round pick this year, and a third or fourth-round pick either this year or next year. That's the price for Marvin Harrison Jr. If you want a quarterback, you're going to pay the quarterback tax. And on top of the quarterback tax, you got to convince the Cardinals not to take the best wide receiver in the draft. So if you're not willing, Minnesota Vikings, to give up 3 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick, then you are not moving up. And there's no way I would do the deal for anything less than that. The third and fourth round pick, that's interchangeable. But I need at minimum 3 first round picks and a second round pick to move up. That's just what history says that it's worth. Whether it's RG3, whether it's Carson Wentz, or whether it's a guy in Trey Lance. Trading up costs multiple picks, and the Minnesota Vikings are going to pay that. Now it's just up to you, Cardinal fan. Are you cool with passing up on what potentially could be the best wide receiver in the draft? Or would you rather go fill the holes that you have on defense, in which that are everywhere? Wide receivers will always be available in this current NFL, especially every single year. We have a surplus now. Brandon Ayuk can't find a home. Justin Jefferson could get traded. Who knows what happened with Jamar Chase next year? Maybe the Bengals don't want to pay him. Wide receivers are always available in this current NFL. So I know it's not flashy. I know it's hard to pass up on Marvin Harrison Jr. And I know in some cases it's not super fun. But you could go fill multiple needs on this team. Defensive line, cornerback, and you could still go draft a wide receiver in what is one of the deepest wide receiver drafts in a decade. But the only way I'm moving out of this pick is for 3 firsts, 1 second, and a third, or a 4th round pick. That is the only way I'm moving out of the 4th overall pick. Because if I can go fill multiple needs on this team this year, and then have 2 first-round picks next year to, who knows, potentially trade up for the next Marvin Harrison Jr., I think that's the smart, mature thing to do for the Arizona Cardinals than to get caught up on what is an awesome, flashy wide receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. And at this point, I am just of the belief that they will trade back, because everything we've seen from Monty Ossenfort is just that. He will trade back. He'll make the mature decision. And if he can fill 3 needs on this team, he'll do it. I know it's hard. I know it kind of sucks because we were all sold on Maserati Marv. But the mature thing to do would probably be to trade back.